Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be doing my preview for the 2025 Japanese Grand Prix, a Grand Prix that I look forward to every year. It's a track that's one of my favorites, super technical, super interesting, a lot of unique corners that you don't really see anywhere else on the F1 grid. So first taking a look at the circuit, of course, 18 corners, one DRS zone that is only going from the final corner, turn 18, down to turn 1. In theory, you could put a DRS zone on that back straight going into 130R, but unfortunately, that's a situation that's an airplane crash waiting to happen. So unfortunately, no DRS there. It's old school track, very, very narrow, so overtaking is quite difficult, similar to Spa in that respect. A fan favorite track that's pretty old. Quite technical, but overtaking, wheel-to-wheel racing, not really its forte, especially with these absolutely massive cars that we have in modern F1. That being said, there are some places where you can overtake. If you have a massive advantage going down that main straight, you can overtake at turn 2. Likewise, going into the turn 16, 17 chicane, that's also another possibility. I attended this Grand Prix in person last year, and one of the more interesting spots that I saw quite a few overtakes was actually where I was sitting at turn 7. And it seems that if you have a really big tire advantage, you can actually make a move there. So again, watch out to see if anyone makes an overtake there. Again, another good spot is at turn 11, the so-called Kobayashi hairpin. That was definitely a favorite overtaking spot of his when he drove in F1, and it's still a pretty handy spot, especially on the opening lap. Now, in terms of circuit length, 5.807 kilometers, and we're expected to have 53 laps on Sunday. The race lap record is 1:30.983 set by Lewis Hamilton in 2019. Not sure if we're going to break that this year. We might have some rain on Sunday, so if that's the case, definitely not going to break that. But if that's the case, that's probably going to be a record that will stand for quite a few more years. Now, the average speed of that fastest lap is 230 kilometers an hour, which ranks 10th out of the 24 tracks on this year's calendar, so a little bit faster than average. Now, in terms of downforce rating from 0 to 1, 0.37, so I'd say medium downforce, but erring a little bit towards the side of lower downforce. Full throttle, 66% of the lap, so quite a bit. And in terms of corner intensity, a lot of it's kind of middle of the range. So a lot of front limited corners, the S's, for example. Some of the first Degner, Spoon, I guess, as well would be front limited, but then there's also quite a few rear limited corners, such as kind of going out of the Kobayashi hairpin, going down the main straight, for example. Now, in terms of pole conversion rate, 62%. So again, qualifying is going to be pretty important, and this is a race that generally is not won from outside the front row, top 3. Obviously, most people, or if you're old enough to remember, you'll remember Raikkonen's win in 2005 from 17th on the grid. That's definitely not a commonplace occurrence, and definitely in the age of refueling, it was, I think, more easier to make your way through the field in certain situations. Definitely not all situations, though. In terms of rookie L qualifying percentage, this is one of the harder tracks for rookies on the calendar, 30%, which is 16th out of the 24 tracks. Formula 2 doesn't really come here as a support series, so for all, let's say I say all 6 rookies except for Lawson, of course, because he did this race in 2023. This track is brand new. So again, it will be a bit of a challenge, but no sprint this weekend, so they will have 3 full practice sessions before the qualifying and before the Grand Prix. Safety car profitability, relatively high, 65%. And like I said, this is one of the more historic tracks on the calendar, with its first race coming in 1987. Tires for this weekend, the 3 hardest in the Pirelli range, soft C3, medium C2, and the hard C1. So it'll be interesting to see how the C1 does. It'll be our first chance to see that C1 tire in action this year. Now, for the schedule this weekend, no feeder series. Again, no Formula 2. I do believe they have the Porsche Super Cups and they have the Ferraris as well. But again, no Formula 2, Formula 3, that kind of thing. And weather, again, there is a bit of uncertainty here. So Friday, FP1, 11:30 local time, for FP2, 3 in the afternoon. And the weather for FP2 is sunny and 15 degrees, so a little bit cool. Saturday, FP3, 11:30 in the morning, qualifying at 3. And again, a little bit cool, 15 degrees and cloudy. Now for Sunday, this is where things are a little bit uncertain still. And, living in Japan, I can attest that you can definitely not tell what the weather's going to be this far in advance. And even, again, comes Friday, Saturday, we probably still won't have a great idea just because of how quickly the weather can change, given that most of the country is so close to the ocean. Now, that being said, the weather forecast as of recording of this video is sunny / partially cloudy as of the time of the race, with the air temperature set to be 19 degrees. The 45% for precipitation is for the day as a whole, and it looks like the rain is going to be more in the morning and less in the afternoon. So it might be a slightly damp track to start the race. So it might be a Hungary 2021 situation where it might be right on the edge between intermediates and slicks for the start of the race, but I would expect that most drivers are probably just going to try to go on the slick tires and just kind of stick it out on those and not have to try to take an extra pit stop. Now, in terms of last year's race, not the most exciting, I would say. It was a Red Bull 1-2, I believe Red Bull's most recent 1-2, with Verstappen ahead of Perez, obviously, and Carlos Sainz rounded out the podium in third. Memorable moments from last year's race. Of course, there was the early red flag with Ricciardo and Albon coming together, I believe, at turn 4. Turn 4, I believe that was. In terms of other notable moments, there weren't really a ton, so I just chose Russell overtaking Piastri in the closing laps for P7. And again, one final interesting thing was that Yuki Tsunoda scored points for the first time at the Japanese Grand Prix, meaning that it was the first time a Japanese driver has scored points at his home race since 2012, which I believe was Kobayashi getting on the podium that year. So obviously, again, with the recent news, of course, if you've been living under a rock, Tsunoda and Lawson have basically swapped places. Tsunoda is driving for Red Bull, and Lawson is driving for Racing Bull. So again, it'll be interesting to see if Tsunoda can indeed get into the points and be the first driver of the Red Bull second seed to get points in quite a while, it seems. I think that's a streak going back to... I'd have to think about this now. When was the last? If Perez scored points in Vegas, that would have been the most recent. So, again, it'll be interesting to see if Tsunoda can indeed get some points this weekend at his home Grand Prix and, of course, his Red Bull debut. Now, in terms of best qualifiers for this track, interestingly enough, Tsunoda actually has the best record relative to his career average, which is 50% better. So he's actually never been out-qualified at this track. Out-qualified his teammate all 4 times he's raced here, with a median qualifying gap of 0.192 seconds in his favor. So it'll be interesting to see if that holds up. Highly doubt it with how things have gone with Lawson in the last 2 races, and just between the fact that, he's basically going into a car he doesn't know that well, and his, of course, a small problem being his teammates, Max Verstappen. Now, number 2, Esteban Ocon plus 40%, median qualifying gap 0.183 seconds in his favor. And number 3, the other Red Bull of Max Verstappen plus 9%. But that being said, Verstappen's career average is so high that, again, plus 9% is still very, very good. Median qualifying gap of 0.196 seconds in his favor. Now, worst qualifiers, a couple interesting names on this list. Number 1 is George Russell, minus 50%. He's been out-qualified by Lewis Hamilton all 3 times that they were teammates together. So the only teammate he's actually out-qualified at Suzuka is Robert Kubica, and I believe Kubica even crashed that qualifying session. So not a super relevant data point there, but still, Russell generally not a great record here at Suzuka in qualifying, and a median gap of 0.242 seconds against him. Number 2, Pierre Gasly, minus 30% with a 0.131 against him. And number 3, interesting, your championship leader, Lando Norris, minus 21%, but still has, on average, the median qualifying gap is 0.075. I believe his record for the track is 50%, so his career average is 71%, so that's why it's still, the median gap is still positive in his favor. Now, for quality model predictions, again, Red Bull decided to screw everything up by switching Lawson Tsunoda. So those ones basically have to restart from scratch, and it's basically reset to what basically the precursor would have been without any data from 2025. And again, as the season goes along, for both the new combinations of Verstappen, Tsunoda, and for Lawson, Hadjar, new data will mean that those should get a little bit more accurate as the season goes along. Unfortunately for Lawson and Hadjar, because both of them are rookies at most tracks, and neither of them meet the 3-race threshold at any track to be able to have any kind of basically changes made to their qualifying predictions. It's basically just going to be the average for the first 10 races together, and then after that it's just going to be the median qualifying gap for whatever it is. So these predictions, it's really just going to be 9 teams now instead of 10, simply because we're not going to have any I'm not going to be able to do anything for Lawson and Hadjar. But again, these are your predictions for this week. And in terms of interesting ones, I would say Verstappen, Lawson, Verstappen, Tsunoda, probably not going to be that close. But again, like I said, this is one of Tsunoda's best tracks. And so that's why the model is basically saying, hey, maybe it'll be a bit closer. Again, Russell, Antonelli, looking like that one will be quite close on account of Russell not being particularly strong at that track. But again, it's something that we shall see on Saturday. Now, closing up with some predictions, I think McLaren, realistically, if it's a dry race, they should win. Probably should get a 1-2 as well, just given how strong they've been the first 2 races in dry conditions. Something that came up at the last race was that it seems like for whatever reason, Piastri's stronger in front limited tracks, more medium high-speed corners, that kind of thing, whereas it seems like Norris is a little bit better with the slow-speed corners, and real limited tracks, a bit kind of like a Perez in that instance. And if that's a trend that continues, perhaps Piastri is going to be the stronger of the two this weekend. So I'm actually going to go with the Piastri win. I'm going to go with Norris second, just because I still think realistically, McLaren probably should end up with a 1-2 here. And number third, I was really thinking about going with George Russell for this one, given he's come third the first 2 races of the season. But given this is one of his weaker tracks, I've decided to go with my more conservative prediction, just go with Verstappen. We'll see how they do this weekend. This is a track he does pretty well at. But that being said, if a Ferrari, for example, got on the podium, wouldn't be too surprised either. So there you go. There's my preview for the 2025 Japanese Grand Prix. Should be a pretty exciting weekend. Of course, this is Tsunoda's Red Bull debut, so again, there'll be a lot of eyes on him, especially from the home crowd. So it'll be really interesting to see how he does. Is he closer to Verstappen than Lawson was? Is he about the same? Is he miles? Is he somehow slower? If that's even possible, does he if that's even possible, is he even getting within 107%? I joke, in all likelihood, there's absolutely no way he's going to be, have any problem with the 107% rule. But that being said, it will be very, very interesting to see how he does, how he adapts to what, by all accounts, seems to be a very, very difficult F1 car. So there's my preview. I'll be back with my review of the race after the Grand Prix. I'll be able to watch the Grand Prix live, so the review should be a couple hours after the Grand Prix at most. And then again, I'll have my power rankings on Monday. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.